Roger Phillips.
BBC Radio Merseyside.
Well, my second guest, Frank Hont, has spent all his working life closely involved with trade unionism. Having been an elected official at branch, regional and national levels for many years, in 2003 he got the job of UNISON's regional secretary in the North West. He retired from that position 2 months ago, and when we met up I noticed how relaxed he was looking and asked if retirement suited him.
It was my decision. I decided that I wanted to take early retirement, so, you know, why wouldn't I look relaxed? I thought about it long and hard, and for me it was the right thing to do at this time.
Are you from this area?
Yeah, born in Old Swan, went to Broad Green Junior School, passed the 11 plus in the days of the 11 plus, and went to Allsop. So yeah, born and bred.
And were you clever at school?
Yeah, I was a clever kid,
You
yeah.
better done with the 11 plus.
I think there were 4 children in Broad Green Junior School that passed the 11 plus, you know, and I was one of them. You have to put 3 choices, I think, for which school you wanted to go to, and Allsop was my first choice. Yeah, I was a bright kid, I think.
And you enjoyed school?
I enjoyed school up until I was about 14, and then, you know, I stopped enjoying it.
Why?
I don't know, really. I think you get interested in different things, you know, pop music, girls, the usual stuff.
You got distracted?
I got distracted, and it was a fatal mistake, yeah.
Were your mum and dad encouraging to you for that, and were they angry when you kind of didn't, you know, fulfil what you wanted to fulfil at that time?
I think so, yeah, because my mother passed the 11 plus. Mother was born in 1914, and she passed the 11 plus, but her mother was widowed, and obviously couldn't afford to send her to the Catholic grammar school, so she didn't go. Yeah. And, you know, she always felt that was a lost opportunity, so she was so excited about me passing the 11 plus, which I think was a natural working class feeling, you know. In those days, we didn't appreciate it as kids, but for our families to think of their child going to a grammar school was a massive thing.
And you were fulfilling what she hadn't been able to fulfill. Yeah.
And my dad was proud, you know, the whole family were proud. It was a big thing in them days, you know, for you to go to a grammar school.
What did they do? Were they intellectuals in inverted commas or not?
Not really. My dad wasn't a reader. My mum wasn't really a reader. My dad had a number of jobs, obviously served right throughout the Second World War in the infantry. Came back and worked for a large part of his life in the, what is now, well, if it's still there, Plessey's, the automatic telephone exchange.
You didn't think of going into following him there?
Not really, no.
Because in those days, a lot of children did follow their father's footsteps, Gatsby.
Yeah, I mean, as it happened, I did leave school at 16. I wanted to get out into the world of work, and I took what was then called a commercial apprenticeship in the English Electric Company. And I can remember my granddad saying to me, well, you've got a job for life there. In the English Elect, because he'd been an engineer and the Napiers built all the big diesel engines. There were 10,000 people worked in the English Electric when I started there, and Grandad said, "Oh, you're in now. That's it."
You did not realise.
No, it lasted till I was about 22. Then Weinstock took over and massive redundancies.
I remember. Were you always involved with the Labour Party in the unions or not?
No. I've only been a member of the Labour Party for about 21 years.
Really?
Yeah.
But unions?
Unions all my life, yeah.
Why? Is that came from your father or what?
My dad was a union member. I don't know. I think I was a child of the 60s, obviously, so throughout the 60s there was the Vietnam thing, there was the hope that Kennedy provided, there was a chance that young people could make a difference. There was a lot of hope around in the 60s for teenagers, and I just thought that the trade union movement offered some of that hope. I just thought it was an important movement. I still think it's an important movement.
But talking about Vietnam, talking about Kennedy, you'd have thought it would be politics, that you'd have joined the Labour Party.
I wasn't ever a joiner, really.
But you automatically joined a trade, and you certainly did in those days.
Trade union,
it was just
absolutely.
an automatic thing.
Everyone did it, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, you were proud to hold a union card. As I say, I served what was called in them days a commercial apprenticeship, so you could be in the union, but you couldn't be active as an apprentice, you know, in the English Electric, but you could be in the union, which was important, you know.
And how long did that apprenticeship last?
I was 21, 16 to 21, and then I moved on, and I had a number of different jobs. I worked for Roundtree Macintosh.
Was that because English Electric closed when you were about
22? Yeah, it was starting to look very,
so you were
very dodgy, yeah.
So you worked for Roundtree Macintosh?
Yeah, and then I got a job with Liverpool City Council, and from then onwards I always worked in the public sector.
But you have that private sector experience when you're young. Has that been useful to you?
Very much so, and it's useful to be able to say when, I mean, I'm a big defender of the public sector, public services, as you know, and them being provided by the public services, and quite often throughout my trade union life it's been useful to be able to say, but I have worked in the private sector, so I've had a taste of the private sector.
What job were you doing at Liverpool City Council?
I was organiser of social services transport, which was a fascinating job.
This is the kind of transport that takes people to day centres, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that gave you a whole insight as a young man into what the families who've got disabled people go through, what they put up with, how they survive. Some of those families, for them to have that young person or even an older person taken out of the house for 3 days, 4 days, in them days, sometimes 5 days, the relief, the respite that it gave to those families was unbelievable, really.
Is that where you've obviously got quite a very strong social conscience? Is that where that formed?
I think so. I think seeing what families, how it was a new social services department when I went to work in Liverpool in 1971. We just had, I think it was called the Seabourn Report, which introduced social services departments. Prior to that, there were welfare departments, children's departments. So we were a new social services department, and we had a fantastic chair of social services, Dr. Cyril Taylor.
I remember Cyril Taylor. I was my doctor at one time.
Famous socialist in this city, former member of the Communist Party, but a great leader. And that was what being chair of social services was about. Cyril wanted to change the world. And it was exciting to work in a department like that, and to see what you could do for working class people. And coming from that community as well, I could see how important it was. It was a time of promise, really, a time of hope.
Hope that wasn't... I mean, have you been frustrated through your life because things have never been fulfilled?
Yeah, because I'm as well as the social services side, I've always had a big interest in the NHS. I don't know whether it's anything to do with it, but I was actually born on the day that the NHS came into being, 5th of July 1948, the very day that the NHS started. So it was free powdered milk from day one for my family. But, it was... So I've always had a feeling for the NHS, and I think now, even now, I think the big challenge in our country is to get an integrated service of the NHS and social care. We've got to get them into... They're not two separate things.
Yeah, they may not be, but the way the government is reshaping, and they're calling for the NHS and social care to come together, but the way they're reshaping doesn't really allow the two to come together. If you've got private companies organising things, how will it work?
Well, the example I always use now is Southern Cross. And you've heard me say it on Radio Merseyside, that if you ever want to see how not to deliver social care, you have an example. Southern Cross is exactly how we shouldn't be doing it. And sadly, that's the way a lot of policy planners think. They think that's the way forward. I'm convinced there isn't.
Now, going back to when you were organising social services, it's interesting you talk about, I was organising this. You've always been a bit of an organiser. That's your skill, really, isn't it? That's the talent.
Yeah, I think, I'm a good organiser, a good coordinator. And that paid off in the trade union movement, because that's what the trade union movement is. It's the biggest social movement in the country. And Cameron talks about the big society, but trade unions are a big society of people who give up their time freely to work collectively with other people. Now, I know there's all kinds of criticism of, and many people listening to this programme will think, well, the union let me down. Yeah, we can't do it all the time, but that collective endeavour, that desire to help one another is what's, bonded me to the movement for all those years.
When did you start becoming active in the movement?
Mainly when I left Liverpool City Council and went to work for Cheshire County Council, which at that time was a Tory-controlled council, but a very prosperous county, so could provide good services and did provide excellent services to the people of Cheshire.
Did you move because it was a step up?
It was a step up, yeah. And I was proud to work for Cheshire right through. It was a good county to work for. It provided good services. And even when, I went through a lot, really. It was run by Tories, then a coalition. Then it was a hung Labour authority, went back Lib Dem Tory. It's been everything. Although, sadly to say, it's gone now. It was everything. But throughout that, there was an ethos amongst the staff and the councillors that they were there to provide services to the people of Cheshire, and it ran through the county. So I was always proud to work for Cheshire County Council. I mean, they had the luxury of having the good income, good rates income, but they did provide good services.
And what level of job were you doing then?
Well, I went through various jobs, but I ended up as part of the senior management providing frontline services in social services and education. So, I suppose quite a senior job. I enjoyed it.
And even though you're in senior management,